This is the MetroWeekly podcast. Today we are sharing several news reports about the transgender community, including these headlines. Elon Musk's trans daughter slams him for lies. Transgender teen stabbed 18 times at Miami airport. Florida stops trans people from changing birth certificates. And Michigan bans gay and trans, panic, legal defenses. We begin our podcast today with
Vivian Jenna Wilson, the transgender child of billionaire Elon Musk, claims her father blatantly lied about aspects of her life and transition. By John Riley on July 29, 2024. Vivian Jenna Wilson, the transgender daughter of Elon Musk, hit back at her father in an interview with NBC News, accusing him of being an absentee father who was cruel to her and of lying about aspects of her life in his public comments. Musk recently appeared on conservative influencer Jordan Peterson's podcast for an interview, blaming Wilson's transition as one of the reasons that he has been vocal about his rejection of transgender identity and his opposition to what he calls woke culture. In that interview, the Tesla and SpaceX CEO, who also owns the social media platform X, claimed that Wilson had been figuratively killed by deciding to transition, and that he had been tricked into agreeing to allow her to receive puberty blockers when she was 16 years old. But Wilson, the daughter of Musk and his first wife, Justine, said that her father was not tricked, claiming that while he hesitated at first, he knew what he was agreeing to when he gave his consent for her to receive gender-affirming care, which she said was life-saving for her, due to experiencing severe gender dysphoria. Wilson told NBC News she took the consent forms to Musk in person, after months of pleading for him to agree to the treatments, and he read them at least twice before signing them. She later continued her transition with hormone therapy, which she says allowed me to thrive. Wilson said she had previously considered speaking out about Musk's behavior as a parent and as a person, but had refrained from doing so. But after his interview with Peterson, she couldn't remain silent anymore. I think he was under the assumption that I wasn't going to say anything and I would just let this go unchallenged, Wilson said. Which I'm not going to do, because if you're going to lie about me, blatantly to an audience of millions, I'm not just gonna let that slide. Musk has spoken out against policies that acknowledge transgender identity as real. He has railed against the use of pronouns, promoted anti-trans content on X, and rolled back protections for trans people on the platform, including a ban on using dead names. He has even gone so far as to relocate his businesses from California to Texas in protest of a recently signed law prohibiting teachers from forcibly outing transgender students to their parents. Wilson criticized Musk and Peterson's voiced skepticism around her feelings of dysphoria. I have been basically put into a point where, to a group of people, I have to basically prove whether or not I was suicidal or not to warrant medically transitioning, she said. It's absolutely mind-boggling. She said, Musk, who has 12 children, was an absentee father. She said he was rarely present in her life, leaving her and her twin brother to be raised by their mother or nannies, even though Musk gained joint custody of them following his divorce from Justine in 2008. He was there, I want to say, maybe 10% of the time. That's generous, she said. He had half custody, and he fully was not there. Wilson added that Musk would frequently berate her for demonstrating stereotypically feminine behavior, even criticizing her for lacking a deeper, more masculine voice when she was in elementary school, well before puberty, which is typically when a male's voice deepens. I was in 4th grade, she recalled. We went on this road trip that I didn't know was actually just an advertisement for one of the cars, I don't remember which one, and he was constantly yelling at me viciously because my voice was too high. It was cruel. Wilson described her father as cold, adding, he's very quick to anger. He is uncaring and narcissistic. Now a 20-year-old college student, Wilson, who has largely shunned the spotlight, told NBC News that she was surprised by the media attention she received in 2022 when she sought court approval in California to legally change her gender and her name, even adopting her mother's maiden name in order to distance herself from her father. She said hasn't talked to her father in 4 years and has refused to be defined by him or his actions. I would like to emphasize one thing, I am an adult. I am 20 years old. I am not a child, she said. My life should be defined by my own choices. Wilson has taken issue with the way that Musk has characterized their relationship and her identity in his public comments. For instance, in a post on X, Musk claimed Wilson was born gay and slightly autistic and that, at age 4, she fit certain gay stereotypes, such as loving musicals and using the exclamation "fabulous" to describe certain clothing. Wilson has said that Musk's alleged recollections of her childhood and his anecdotes about her behavior aren't true. This is entirely fake. Literally none of this ever happened. Ever, she wrote in a post on Threads. I don't even know where he got this from. My best guess is that he went to the Milo Yiannopoulos School of Gay Stereotypes, just picked some at random and said a good enough in a last-ditch attempt to garner sympathy points when he is so obviously in the wrong even in his own effing story. He doesn't know what I was like as a child because he quite simply wasn't there, she wrote in a follow-up post. And in the little time that he was, I was relentlessly harassed for my femininity and queerness. Obviously he can't say that, so I've been reduced to a happy little stereotype FGing along to use at his discretion. I think that says a lot about how he views queer people and children in general.
Next up, we have two disturbing stories from Florida. First,
an Ohio man faces attempted murder charges for stabbing a transgender teen with a butcher knife and attempting to throw her over a railing. By John Riley on July 28, 2024. A man has been arrested and charged in an attack on a 17-year-old transgender girl at Miami International Airport on July 20. Alexander Love, 29, an Ohio resident most recently staying in Miami, faces charges of first-degree attempted murder with a deadly weapon and attempted premeditated murder for stabbing the victim at least 18 times and attempting to throw her off a fourth-floor balcony. Miami-Dade police say the unidentified victim is a transgender girl who is in the process of transitioning. It's unclear whether she was attacked due to her gender identity. Officers responded to Terminal J in the airport around 11:30 p.m. after receiving reports of a stabbing, according to a news release from the police department. The victim was reportedly eating a meal while seated on the floor in the pre-security area of the terminal, when Love allegedly began stabbing her without provocation in the face, head, arms, shoulder, neck, and legs. He then attempted to throw her over the fourth-floor railing. The victim was able to escape by running down the stairs to the third-floor level, where officers found her. Officers located Love and detained him, recovering a butcher knife in the process. In the midst of the chaos, police received reports of a possible active shooter, leading to the evacuation of two concourses. Upon further investigation, they determined that the information was false and that only the stabbing had taken place. Emergency medical technicians from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue responded to the scene of the stabbing and transported the victim to Jackson Memorial Hospital's Ryder Trauma Center in critical condition. She underwent emergency surgery and is still recovering from her injuries at the hospital. Video later posted to social media by Only in Dade, a citizen journalism website, appeared to show a woman covered in blood being assisted by a man. Surveillance video uncovered by police reportedly shows Love staring at the victim for some time before drawing the butcher knife from his backpack, reports the Miami Herald. County officials say that both Love and the victim were homeless, though it's currently unclear whether they had any prior acquaintance. According to NBC South Florida, Love was detained by Customs and Border Patrol shortly after the attack. During an interview, he claimed to have become briefly acquainted with the teen at the airport. He told investigators he was possibly drugged and that someone had inserted an unknown object into his rectum. Love reportedly added that he was unsure if the teen was to blame, but made a statement indicating that he needed to hurt whoever hurt him, according to an arrest report. He claimed that was what motivated him to purchase the butcher knife used in the attack from a Target store close to Miami International Airport. Appearing on July 22 before Judge Mindy Glazer of the 11th Judicial Circuit, Love was arraigned on charges and denied bond, citing the violent nature of the attack and the seeming lack of provocation. He reportedly has a criminal record, having previously been charged with criminal mischief and resisting arrest, according to NBC. Love is currently being held at Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center. He was ordered to stay away from the victim if he should be released from custody in the future. Despite the victim's gender identity, Love was not charged with a hate crime. Police say they do not have evidence at this time to indicate that the attack was motivated by bias, and have not yet talked with the victim. But any bias enhancements could be added at a later date if there is evidence to support such charges. The case remains under investigation.
Now, we have word that the Florida government is interfering with trans people's lives.
Despite there being no law directing them to, Florida Health Department officials are categorically denying requests to amend gender markers. By John Riley on July 29, 2024. By adopting an opaque approval process that appears largely aimed at rejecting all requests, Florida Health Department officials have effectively barred transgender individuals in the state from changing the gender marker on their birth certificates. Since 2018, transgender Floridians have been allowed to amend the gender marker on their birth certificates to reflect their gender identity. To do so, they had to provide paperwork indicating that they had undergone clinical treatment for gender dysphoria and evidence of a legal name change. That was a change from a prior policy requiring them to undergo gender confirmation surgery before being allowed to amend any vital documents. Critics say that even individuals who have submitted such paperwork are now being denied, leading them to accuse state officials of deliberately enacting policies that refuse to recognize transgender identity as real or valid. It's unclear what criteria are being used to determine whether to approve or reject requests. People, both transgender minors and adults, who have submitted previously acceptable documentation have been rejected, as reported by the 19th, a news outlet that reports on gender-related issues. But even the explanation for rejections has differed from case to case. In one case, a denial letter claims that, for trans minors to obtain gender marker changes, they must submit documentary evidence established prior to the child's 7th birthday. In another case, the Health Department's Bureau of Vital Statistics says that trans adults must provide documentation of transgender identity established prior to the registrant's 18th birthday, which could prove difficult for those who did not know they were transgender, or did not pursue social or medical transition prior to adulthood. Still, other requests have been rejected because applicants did not submit evidence that the gender marker on their birth certificate contains a misstatement, error, or omission. The Bureau of Vital Statistics has claimed that discrepancies between assigned sex at birth and gender identity do not constitute an error in need of correction. Simone Criss, an attorney with the Southern Legal Council in Florida, and the director of the organization's Transgender Rights Initiative, told the 19th that she has worked with around 80 clients who have been barred from changing the gender marker on their birth certificate since last August. None of their appeals, including an administrative hearing overseen by the Health Department, have been successful. Most are just being ignored, Criss said of the status of those requests. "I've filed many. There's at least 5 that I have pending at this moment that the department hasn't responded to," Criss added, despite making, I think, very compelling arguments as to why the department is violating the rights of transgender people born in the state of Florida. They have come back with the same rationale over and over for denying it. Which is sex doesn't change. Only 5 other states besides Florida do not allow gender markers to be updated on birth certificates: Tennessee, Montana, North Dakota, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Many more, especially states with Republican-led legislatures, have threatened to pass similar restrictions. For transgender people whose personal identity documents contain inconsistent gender markers or do not reflect their outward gender expression, daily or routine activities can become stressful or difficult, as they may face harassment, discrimination, or even physical violence from being outed as transgender or non-binary. For now, the best option for transgender Floridians is to update all other government-issued documents, including their passports, to reflect their gender identity. Those passports can often be used in place of state identification cards or licenses. It's clear the only avenue or the only route to reversing or striking down this policy is using federal impact litigation, like we have in all the other areas where trans folks' rights have been eroded in Florida, Criss told the 19th. We are planning to challenge this in federal court as well. The law signed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer aims to prevent criminals from using a victim's LGBTQ identity to justify violent actions.
Finally, some positive news out of the Midwest.
A new law signed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer aims to prevent criminals from using a victim's LGBTQ identity to justify violent actions. By John Riley on July 28, 2024. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed a bill into law outlawing the use of gay or transgender panic as a legal defense. The state becomes the 20th to outlaw such defenses, in which individuals accused of violent crimes argue that learning of a victim's sexual orientation or gender identity, and the fear and panic caused by such a revelation, led them to react irrationally and violently. Such arguments are not standalone defenses but are used in conjunction with other legal strategies to argue for reduced charges or more lenient sentencing. Whitmer signed the bill, which was one of 40 measures passed by the Democratic-led legislature, including an education funding bill, consumer protection measures, and infrastructure spending, on July 23, reports The Hill. The measure to ban panic defenses passed narrowly by a 56-54 vote. It passed the Senate by a much larger margin of 24-14, with 2 Republicans joining Democrats in support. No one should fear violence because of their sexuality or gender identity, Whitmer said, explaining why she signed the bill into law. She also defended her record in office to the LGBTQ publication The Advocate. Since I took office, we expanded the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to cover the LGBTQ+ community, established the Michigan LGBTQ+ Advisory Council, and banned conversion therapy for minors, Whitmer said. Our work is not done as we continue to make progress and move Michigan forward. I look forward to reviewing the legislation and continuing to work alongside the LGBTQ+ community to ensure justice. State Representative Lori Pohutsky, Democrat of Livonia, the bill's sponsor, told the Michigan Advance that, even though she was not out as bisexual at the time, she was deeply impacted as a child by violent attacks on members of the LGBTQ community. I have been incredibly passionate about this bill for several years, and I am elated to see it signed into law. Protecting the future of LGBTQ+ people across Michigan is something I have been working hard to do, Pohutsky said in a statement. This bill, alongside many other monumental pieces of legislation brought forth by Michigan Democrats, is a huge step toward securing a safe and inclusive state for all Michiganders. While it's been hard to track where panic defenses have been used in American courtrooms, the LGBTQ+ Bar Association has said that it was used as recently as 2018 to mitigate murder charges against a defendant. It was also used, or defendants attempted to introduce it in court, to argue for more lenient sentences in the murders of LGBTQ people, including Matthew Shepard, Brandon Tina, Marco McMillan, Gwen Araujo, Angie Zapata, and Island Nettles. The LGBTQ+ Bar Association has publicly opposed such defenses, which they say are a form of victim blaming, even urging state and tribal governments, in a 2013 resolution, to take legislative action to limit their use.
Thanks for listening. Read more stories like this by visiting MetroWeekly.com. And if you enjoyed these stories, please hit like, comment, follow and subscribe. We appreciate your effort to help us grow.